Ready to go? Huh? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. الحمد لله رب العالمين. لك الحمد يا ربي كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. الحمد لله حمد الشاكرين، وأصلي وأسلم وأبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم واجعلنا منهم آمين. Inshallah, this evening we will discuss the future of Gaza. And someone may point out that the future is in the hands of Allah, and it is. It's not that we know the future. What is it is that we look at the reality, study the reality, study the different perspective that's coming from different direction. Some of them are clearly conspiracies against the Ummah. Some of them are naive. And some of them really looking for the interest of this Ummah. And understanding the reality of the Muslims and the reality of the world is a very important aspect of our deen. We have been told by the shuyukh of the Sultan these days, the so-called scholars $4, they tell the Ummah, don't worry about any issue because the king knows best. I mean, we have seen mashayikh in Saudi telling the Ummah explicitly, don't worry about this issue. These are not for you. Leave it to the king. Leave it to the person who knows. And since when the affairs of the Ummah are limited to the rulers, especially if they are corrupted, especially if they conspire against the Ummah, especially if they plan with the powers of the world, the Zionists and beyond, against the Ummah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he says, "Man asbaha walam yahtam bi amr al-muslimina falaysa minhum." If you end up not caring about the affairs of the Ummah, you are not one of them. The brother in his khatira just mentioned few cases that are of interest, especially to the Muslims in this country. And Gaza is at the heart of the Ummah right now. And the plans and the plots that's happening at the night time to be executed in a very deceptive way is what's being cooked. So it's our duty as an Ummah to know what's going on, spread the word, and try to stand in front of those conspiracies by whatever ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us. In this country, we have our tongues, and we have our collective power in this country. And don't underestimate that. The demonstrations for Gaza at the US Ivy Leagues and then beyond to many colleges and universities have shaken the foundation of the Zionists in this country and in occupied Palestine. a whole young generations of Americans, many of them are Jewish, who now see the truth of this settler colonial project in Palestine. So when we discuss these issues, this is part of what dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. If you make salah, you are making dhikr. If you do sadaqah, if you read the Quran, if you are an activist in the way of Allah, pushing the agenda of the ummah, if you speak for da'wah, for this deen, or for the affairs of this ummah, all of this is part of dhikrullah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's important to realize this, that this is not a matter of we are interested in politics. That's not the case. Why would we invest so much time and energy and money to read and learn? It's for the purpose of advancing the cause of this deen. And read the circumstances around the Surah Al-Rum when it was revealed. Muslims struggling in Mecca against the kuffar of Quraysh. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Rum is talking about a big fight that was happening between the Persians and the Roman empires. And said that the Romans were defeated, but they will come and be victorious. And the Muslims discussing this issue with the kuffar in Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ being aware of his surrounding and beyond. Sahaba saying, we are struggling in Mecca. He said, go to Abyssinia. Abyssinia is not part of Arabia. It's part of Africa. You need to cross the Red Sea to be there. I mean, I can go on and on and on. That when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the children of Israel, their affairs was taken care by the prophets. كانت تسوسهم الأنبياء. Hadith in Imam Muslim. That's the word siyasa, تسوسهم, take care of their affairs. He said, after me there will not be prophets, but they will be khulafa. Islamic khalifs, Islamic rulers. He's talking to the ummah. So all this what you hear these days from those shuyukh, what's going on is not your issue. It's not your affairs. Leave it to the king. And we know that this king is conspiring against the ummah. We know that. Just look at what happened in the last 3-4 years in Arabia. And look at this, all this talk about normalization with the Zionists. Look at this talk of investing $600 billion. Trump is saying, you know, I need from the Saudis 450 billion. Last time they gave 400 billion, I need 450. He said, no, we'll send 600 billion. And he's telling you, leave these matters to the king. Well, we saw a king last week coming to Washington, D.C. As they say, coming to America. King of Jordan coming to America to discuss Gaza. And what a shame. What a shame that the Arab rulers should be ashamed of themselves. Standing very humiliated. I mean, we hear the Trump, various versions of the story. The US will buy Gaza. Okay, buy. Who's gonna put the money? Who's gonna take the money? Who's gonna accept the deal? Who's part of this deal? You know, when you buy and sell, there are two parties. And he's saying the US will not put a penny. Okay, so who's putting the money? You know, our king. in Saudi and Amir in UAE and so on and so forth. Then he comes and says, we need to clean Gaza from explosives. And the next day he's asked, are you going to put soldiers on the ground? He said, no. Is he going to send Elon Musk to clear the explosives? Who are you going to send if you're not going to send the army? And running out of ways to justify and explain his answers, he said, no, we are not going to buy it. We will own it. How? I mean, this piece of land, there are 2.3 million people who some of their ancestors lived there for hundreds of years. What do you mean you want to own it? I mean, can you just go to the street and take a car and say, I'm going to own your car? On what basis? So, this whole story of what's next for Gaza, of course, no doubt started on October 7th. But it took a different turn when Netanyahu visited Washington, D.C. You remember Netanyahu? In Arabic, we call him Netan. Netan means rotten. They don't call him Netanyahu, they call him Netan. So he came to Washington, D.C. to meet President Trump. And make no mistake, Trump does not like Netan. He hates him. He hates his guts. And he does not hide it. In front of him, he started talking about how Gaza is destroyed, how the people of Gaza have suffered and this and that. You know, he's talking next to the one who did it. And not much praise to Netan as, you know, diplomats usually do. He still have beef with Netanyahu from the day that Netanyahu congratulated Biden when he defeated Trump. He was very upset, and he's still very upset. If he's just like the camel. If he has something against somebody, he will never forget. Because remember, Netanyahu was waiting for 9 months, dragging his feet, waiting for Trump to come and give him a free hand to do whatever he wants in Gaza and to stop delivering food to Gaza. And because Trump wants to show that he is the strong president, he is the real man, and Netanyahu and Biden had all this time they did not do anything, he came out and said, Biden is very weak. Before I get to the White House, I stopped the war in Lebanon and I stopped the war in Gaza. Okay. So the Zionists did not like it, but they have to go with it. So when he comes for a visit and he's ready to say that the President Trump is the best president for Israel, I mean, he said it with Biden before. I mean, this great munafiq is really someone. I mean, Shaitan can be taught some of his tricks. That's why he survived all those years, because he lies and tell everyone what he likes to hear. So he come to Washington, D.C. and meet with Trump. And there are two narrations now. There are two stories. One story says before they went in the front of the press, Trump told Netanyahu, I'm going to have an announcement about the U.S. taking over Gaza. That's one version of the story. Another version of the story is that the Netanyahu is just like me and you, hear this thing for the first time. That's why if you look at his face, I know this would not appeal to the young men, but people who are, you know, from back home, he's like the chicken that is going around ready to lay an egg. Look at his face. When Trump said that, we're gonna buy Gaza and control Gaza and rebuild Gaza and the Riviera of the Middle East and this and this and this and this and that. And all what Netanyahu had to say at the end, yeah, it's worth, pursuing and looking at this option. Because it was shocking to the whole world. I mean, this president came on the premise, I want to end the wars in the world. We do not want more wars. That's why he's going behind Zelensky and talking to Putin. And they are telling Zelensky, give up land. We have to end this war. And they are on the side of Putin, not the side of Zelensky. So when it comes to Gaza, it was different. With Ukraine, it's obvious because Trump is very close to Putin, no doubt about this. And the lady in charge of intelligence that he appointed is close to Putin, no doubt about it. So there was no surprises there. But when it came to Gaza, it was a shock. Look at the chief of staff. As we said last week, the chief of staff looking at him, I mean, her eyes were wide open as if what are you talking about? I mean, you are talking about bringing the troops from Syria. You wanted to bring the troops from Afghanistan in the old days and from Iraq and from whatever it is. He said that this whole thing is not worth the life of an American soldier. And now, in fact, he talked to Erdogan when he was in the first his big term, and he told Erdogan, we're going to withdraw from Syria. And it was made public. And his advisor came and said, what? You crazy? They took it back. They took it back. I mean, they did not deny that he said we will withdraw. So when he comes and says the U.S. will go and take over a piece of land, it was shocking. Because that's not him. That's not the people who are surrounding him. But he have brought a new dynamic that really have turned heads around the world, especially the Zionists. I mean, many among the religious Jews in Palestine are saying, look, the Old Testament says Palestine is for the Jews, not for America. And of course, Netanyahu is not happy. I mean, their agenda was to take over Gaza and to resettle in Gaza and this and this and that and, all his objectives. But he cannot stand in front of Trump and tell him no, because he knows the consequences. But he was not as humiliated as the king of Jordan. I mean, the king of Jordan was sitting, and by the way, it was a surprise. The protocol, the agreement between Jordan and the US was that Trump will meet with King Abdullah privately, his son will be there, and after the meeting, they will go and have a press conference. Now, during the meeting, suddenly, the doors open, and many journalists flood the meeting and start asking questions. And anyone who saw King Abdullah knew that he's not looking at a king. He's looking at a elementary level student standing in front of a principal in the school, and he did a crime or something big. He was shaking. I mean, he opened and closed his eyes about 100 times in the 2-3 minutes. And when he was put on the spot, what do you think of the idea that Trump is talking about? That's when the media asked him, we are waiting for Egypt. And Egypt will have a plan with the Arab countries, And we are waiting for Egypt. And then we will have a meeting in Saudi. No, they are asking you what you think of the plan. They are not asking you, you know, what the Arabs will do. They ask you what you think. You are a king. In your country, you behave as if you are Fir'aun. So what is it that you think about it? And at the end he said, I told the president that we will take 2,000 seriously ill children. Trump said, oh, I did not know this. This is just news to me. That's a good start. Because Trump wants to move 2 million people from Gaza to Jordan and Egypt. And Abdullah is saying, you know, I agreed to take 2,000. Yeah, that's a good first step. But the way that this thing done, I mean, the only thing that he said of value, really, he said, I will look for the interest of my people. And he did not say it in a challenging voice or a loud voice. It was, you know, this loud, yeah, I will take into account the interest of my own people. That was the only thing that is good that the king have said. But he did not say it in a forceful way, or in a way that, you know, look, to bring 2 million people to Jordan and to Egypt, we have to take into account the serious implication. None of this. None of this. None of this. And in fact, when he left the White House, he shook hand with Trump, and his son, who was there seeing his dad being humiliated, they said intentionally, I do not know, he did not shake the hand with Trump when he was leaving the White House. Because this was a big insult to the king, to his son, and to the people of Jordan. Saying basically, I tell you, and you cannot say no. I mean, he said it in front of the king of Jordan. And before that, even in the first term, when he met with the Sisi, that we give Jordan and Egypt so much money. So basically, you cannot say no, you know. We give you direct money. They give Jordan each year $1.1 billion, and Egypt around 1.4, 1.5 billion. Plus, they support them to take loans from the IMF and the World Bank. So in a short, Trump idea is not clear. What's clear about it, at least the only element that's clear about it, is that the people of Gaza will be removed from Gaza. Now, where they're gonna go? We heard many stories. How he gonna have access to Gaza? Gonna buy it or own it or take over it or what have you? No idea. All what he said, Netanyahu at the end will need to hand Gaza to us. I mean, Netanyahu is not in charge of Gaza in this regard. And many observers and analysts do not really believe all this nonsense. In fact, the former Prime Minister of England, Johnson, he said, why don't you take the Palestinian people to Mar-a-Lago? You know, Mar-a-Lago is his fancy residence in Florida. Trump fancy residence in Florida. He said they would like it if you take it there. Because he keeps saying, the people of Gaza will like it. The people of Gaza will have this and will have this. We'll put them in nice houses. We'll put them in nice areas. We will put and we will put and put. And again, you know, this is not planned. And if we look at the other action that Trump and Elon Musk have done in Washington, D.C., you can say that there's chaos, that the government is being dismantled. And they have made some decision and took it back because Republican congressmen and senators and advisors told them it's a disaster. The country will come to a standstill. They had to change it when they freeze $3 trillion to the American people through assistance and grants and so on and so forth. And the thing that you have, he stands in the front of the cameras and said, everybody loved this plan. Who's everybody? I mean, who even knew of this plan? Except maybe one or two. Some suspect that his son-in-law, the Zionist Jared Kushner, has this idea because he has spoken at Harvard with some similar terms. If you bring Trump's speech and Kushner's speech next to each other, you will see, a pattern. But even his close advisor, State Department, Department of Defense, which should be on top of this, absolutely they have no idea. So if you ask, what is it that Trump wants in Gaza? Your guess is as good as anybody's. Now, there are some who say that he's not serious. He's putting a dark picture, which is remove the Palestinians just like this from Gaza, send them to Egypt and Jordan, and he said maybe other countries. It was mentioned Albania and Indonesia, and of course they said no. We did not agree. Nobody even asked us. That he's saying this to force the Arab countries to come and take over Egypt, over Gaza, led by Egypt and UAE. A major blunder, again, this chaotic behavior, a major blunder was made after Hamas issued a statement saying basically the agreement that we have within Netan is being violated, therefore we are not going to release any hostage until this thing is fixed. And Trump jumped and made this statement. Hamas have until Saturday at 12 o'clock. If they do not release all the hostages, hell will open. Now remember, there was an agreement. Hamas initially wanted free all the hostages, you free all the Palestinian prisoners, and we stop the war. Netanyahu said, no, we need to discuss and we have it on stages. So that was what Netanyahu asked for. Now, 3 people were supposed to be freed Saturday. And this mentality of Trump, you have until 12 o'clock on Saturday. If you do not release them, we're going to open hell. He thinks that he's talking to Canada. You have a month. If you do not come with a proposal, we're going to put sanctions. Or you become the 51st state of America. Or the way he talks to Mexico or to China. Of course, Hamas said, we are not going to release the hostages. I mean, you do not need to be a genius or smart to understand that this will not happen. He just threw this word. But he put Netanyahu in a corner. So Netanyahu suddenly came to the media and said, unless Hamas free the hostages, you see, he did not say all the hostages. Because he knows the consequences, that this will never happen. Trump said all the hostages, so 60, 70 of them need to be freed before 12 o'clock on Saturday. Otherwise, all hell will open on Gaza. So Trump repeated the same statement. We agree with the President, Trump, that Hamas need to release the hostages. They did not say all. Otherwise, we'll have hell open. Okay, suddenly, we start seeing trucks moving through to Gaza on Thursday. And suddenly, we start seeing Qatar and Egypt saying the agreement is back in place. And Hamas announced we will free the 3 hostages that we agreed to, and Netanyahu will free about 200 or so Palestinian prisoners. Saturday came, three of those dual citizens, one of them is American, Israeli, one of them I think is have a Russian, in fact he got a new passport from Lavrov, and one, I mean those dual citizens who have double citizenship. So the three of them were released, and suddenly Netanyahu, who kept the threat of Trump, released the 200 or so, and they said, there'll be another stage. So 12 o'clock Saturday came, and, as they say, sakka wajhu ala Trump. 12 o'clock came, so what's your plan? Sakka wajhu mean, said his face become cold, because he could not face the people. So they said, it's 12 o'clock, what's going to happen? He said, it's up to the Israeli government. And whatever they plan, they will consult with us. And of course, the Israeli government is not planning anything except exchanging hostages, because now they are in the corner based on that there is now public opinion, the majority, but they said 75% or so, who wants this deal to continue and the hostages to be released. So all of this is surrounding Trump and his plan. So if it's up to this plan, which, as I said, is not realistic, it's totally, out of anything that was designed or studied or planned, that just came out of the blue for a reason or another, or no reason, is to remove the people of Gaza, build hotels and restaurants on the beaches, and as he said, give some of it to different countries and bring jobs that will continue for too many jobs that will continue for people who work in those hotels and restaurants, and this will be a blessing for the whole area, and everybody love it, although politicians around the world went against it. Within this environment, Netanyahu knows that the Saudis, Egypt government, Jordanian government, and UAE are on his side. And anyone who has doubt, go to our lecture on the book War by Bob Woodward. That Blinken visited Cairo, Amman, Riyadh, and Abu Dhabi, and met with the leaders of the four countries, and all of them tell him the same thing: Israel have to finish Hamas. They have to finish Hamas. The head of the Egyptian intelligence went further. He said, I know the tunnels, they are too deep. I don't advise the Israelis to go into the tunnels. Wait until Hamas raise their heads and chop their heads. That's what he told by Blinken, the Secretary of State. So Netanyahu said this, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has his way. So he made this statement. Again, we are still talking about within the bounds of what Trump wants. We'll talk about the other options a little later on. So Netanyahu, hearing this statement coming from the Saudis, that Saudi will normalize if only a Palestinian state is established. And Trump being asked in front of the whole world, is the Saudis asking for a Palestinian state for normalization? He said, no, they are not asking for a Palestinian state. Trump said it in front of the whole world. I mean, this is not something done behind the closed door. He said the Saudis are not asking for a Palestinian state as a condition. Clearly. So then Netanyahu got ahead of himself and issued this statement, saying if Saudi want to establish a Palestinian state, they can establish it in Saudi. And I tell you, Subhan al-Khaliq, suddenly the stand in Saudi, it's as if the statements coming from the media, the Saudi media, and from some of the officials, you think it's coming from Hamas or Al Jazeera. I mean, amazing. Amazing. I mean, you find this Saudi report saying Netan, a Zionist, a son of a Zionist. Wow. I mean, this comes from Saudi Arabia, saying Netanyahu, he's a Zionist, a son of a Zionist. And this journalist in a Saudi sponsored TV satellite station saying Netanyahu looked like a rooster who was slaughtered. رقصة الديك المذبوح. Wow. And you start hearing from the mouthpieces that are paid to support Ibn Salman, did the doctors extract Netanyahu's prostata or they extract his mind? Wow. I mean, you know, statesman coming, you think, I mean, if I only listen to the media without knowing who's talking, I think this is Al Jazeera got even wilder. It's like Al Jazeera, but got wilder. I mean, did you hear Al Jazeera when they're saying Netanyahu, the Zionist, the son of a Zionist? Well, the Saudis are saying it. Why? Because Netanyahu said, let's establish a Palestinian state in Saudi. I mean, imagine if Trump took this and repeated. If Trump took this thing and said, yeah, Saudi is big, wide, this country is huge. And Palestine, it's a small like this. Yeah, why don't we have a state in Saudi? And he will take it seriously. I mean, I assure you, brothers and sisters, you go now, I know that many of us feel now for the West Bank of what we see, the evacuation, or I said the ejection of 20,000 people from their homes and the destruction in Jenin and Tul Karim and beyond. You know, we have feeling for those, our brothers and sisters, and what took place in Gaza with almost 50,000 shaheed. But those Arab leaders now cannot sleep. Nightmares. What Trump will say tomorrow. And you have seen thousands upon thousands of Jordanian school children and men and women in the streets. Of course, you know, the mukhabarat, the intelligence orchestrated this. They are receiving the king, welcoming the king after this humiliation in Washington, D.C. So, this will bring us to what's the Arab plan for Gaza. The Arabs are between a rock and a hard place. If they come and reject in their conference on the 28th of this month, Trump plan explicitly, they know they'll be in trouble from different sides. And if they come and agree with it, they also will be in trouble from different sides. One of the main issue when it comes to what's the future of Gaza is who gonna control Gaza. After the second stage, because we have the first stage that's now, we have the second stage to discuss releasing the army people who are in hostages, the men. And the third stage is to reconstruction. So the main question with the second stage of ending the war, who gonna control Gaza? And the jerk the ambassador of the UAE in Washington, D.C., Al-Utayba, who is a Zionist more than the Zionist, he said, that's the plan that's on the table about Trump plan. There's no other plan. Allahu Akbar. And we had voices from within the same country saying things that are similar. Remember, a few months back, Netanyahu came publicly and said the United Arab Emirates agreed to take major part in the control of Gaza after the war. And there was an uproar. And the Emirates came and issued an official statement saying it did not happen. I ask you, who is lying? Who was lying? Ibn Zayed, no doubt. They already made a commitment. But Netanyahu went ahead of himself and exposed them. There's no doubt that the Zionists trust Ibn Zayed first, Ibn Salman second, third, Abdullah and Sisi together. With Sisi, they have issues. Not with him personally, but with the structure historically. That's why when Egypt mentioned that they're gonna buy some new armament, the Israelis went to there. Why? I mean, there's no enemies for Egypt. Why you are buying a new armament? What's your business? I mean, you have a peace agreement, so supposedly what's your worry? Their worry is, well, there was something before that, you know. Mursi, Allah Arhamu, came, and things could have changed. But those people who became in charge, they have very little political background, unfortunately, and they blew it. And we got Sisi in this regard. So the Arab countries supposedly will meet and try to come with a formula. This formula will not anger Trump. At the same time, it will not anger their own people. Because this thing is getting to a point where the issue of Gaza became at the heart of this Muslim ummah and beyond. And we have started even hearing some statements from former officials. I mean, have you seen Turkey? Ibn Abdul Aziz, the former head of the Saudi intelligence for 20 years, he came on an interview with CNN. What he was wearing? A Palestinian kafiyah. I mean, we know Saudis wear this white thing from the Amir or the red one down to the Sheikh wal Haram. So that was, an important gesture. Again, this is after what Netanyahu said. So the Arabs are confused. And the Emirates will push clearly to end any role for Hamas. While Qatar and Turkey, although Turkey is not part of the Arab meeting, but they have their say, will push for Hamas to be part of the solution. What was also interesting, I have been wondering why none of the Arab countries or even the Muslim countries, nobody said that it's Israel that I have to pay for the reconstruction. Not a single one said this. Until I read 4 days ago that Erdogan said Israel have to pay $100 billion for what they did in Gaza. Not a single Arab leader would have the guts. All of them are dependent that, Saudi and Qatar will foot the bill, and maybe UAE or what have you, with their conditions. So from this perspective, the former foreign minister of Turkey came with a solution really worth looking at. He said Gaza was under the Ottomans, and I am calling for the government of Turkey to sign an agreement and put Gaza under the protection of Turkey. Wow. I mean, that would be something. Of course, do you think the Arab countries would welcome such a thing? Of course not. Of course not. In this regard. Now, what does the Hamas vision for the future of Gaza? Is that we need to be part of the future of Gaza, if not the future of Gaza. And they will have certain leverage for a while. They have 40, 50,000 people under arms, and they have their tunnels. And they had made it clear that any force that come to Gaza, regardless, will consider it an occupying force. So this was a signal to the Arab countries, keep out. And again, they may be flexible to a certain point of allowing a technocrat government or semi-government to run Gaza, but the security is in their hand. Those are so far, the signals that came from Hamas. Now, what does the Palestinian Authority want? I know, you're saying, who cares? Well, yes, who cares? They are not part of anything. When you put a zero on the left of the decimal point, right? Put the decimal point and put zeros on the left. No matter how many zeros, it does not matter. They are zero. They have no say. They have no say. And they do not even have anything on the right of the decimal point. They do not have even 0.0001% of the say. Nobody cares or asks. What do they think? Abbas is sitting in the West Bank. Do you hear anybody saying, let's talk to him and see what he thinks? It does not count. But what they, from his cronies, what they are asking for, they want total control of Gaza. And they attack Jenin to show Trump that we can do the job. And they failed. So the Israelis eventually invaded Jenin. I mean, one of their cronies went on satellite TV saying Hamas is finished. Hamas is nothing. Hamas. And then the interviewer, the lady said, Mr. Hamas is there. It's negotiating with the Israelis. It's getting hundreds of prisoners out. They are discussing details. They are in the middle of this. He said, are you supporting Hamas? I said, no, I'm not. I'm just telling you this is the reality. You are saying they do not exist. I mean, she did not have the guts to tell him you do not exist in this thing. So the Palestinian Authority, their proposal is that initially they wanted to have a minister in the government in the West Bank that runs the affairs of Gaza. And of course, no one will accept it. And you might ask, what is it that they want? They want the billions of dollars that will come. They want the pennies, the money that's gonna go, pennies to reconstruct Gaza, to go through their government. Just like your Sisi. What do you think Sisi wants? He wants those billions of dollars to go through his government. So, those who, they're not looking for the best interest of Gaza or the Muslim Ummah. Each one saying, wow, there will be tens of billions of dollars. Let's see how we can, nilhaf, take some. So of course, nobody would accept. In fact, even Egypt did not accept a minister in the West Bank, in the government in the West Bank, Abbas government, to look over, because she said, we need transparency. What does it mean, we need transparency? You are thieves just like us. They know each other. I mean, you are a thief and we are thieves, You are after the billions. No, the billions are ours. So I said, no, we will not accept it. We need transparency. Transparency means things have to go through us. Unfortunately, that's, how things are. Now, the last item is, what is the vision of the Zionists in this regard? And this thing is also have evolved. Initially, when October 7 started, 6 hours the army did not show up. Hamas and many civilians and Islamic Jihad and others were really in control of the surrounding of Gaza, taking over 3 military bases and 21 or 23 military points, and destroying so many tanks and equipment, and taking and killing so many soldiers, and taking people of high ranks, and this and this and that. The Israelis lost their mind. And initially they said, those are not humans, those are, this animals, calling them animals, human animals, and we will not allow food or medicine or fuel or this or that to enter Gaza. Then came Netanyahu and said that we have 3 objectives. We have to finish Hamas. We have to get all our hostages back. And we need to de-radicalize Gaza. And we will not accept anything less than those 3 objectives. The extreme right wing, they said, one more thing, we need to resettle in Gaza and establish settlements. And they said that we are planning this in coordination with Netanyahu, but he does not want to explicitly say it. So their vision initially was, take over Gaza, destroy Hamas, get the hostages with military pressure, and change the direction of how the people of Gaza think of themselves and think of their own Gaza Strip, and as part of this ummah and as adherent to this deen. Now, as time progressed, the whole world was telling Netanyahu, you cannot destroy Hamas, period. I mean, even generals said, look, this is an idea. This is an idea. Even if you kill, tens of thousands, this idea is there. So then don't keep saying, this is my objective, because it's not achievable. And during the war, suddenly, those right-wing section of the Israeli society, they start having conferences and dividing Gaza among themselves. I mean, those are videos on YouTube, you can see them. Conferences by Jewish extremists dividing Gaza among themselves. You get 1 kilometer, he will get 1 kilometer, you get this section, he will get this section. They were dividing it as it's it's given, it's there, it's ours, let's just divide it. But of course, things did not go their way in this regard. So at one point, somehow they agreed to having a representative from Palestinian Authority at the Rafah checkpoint. And Netanyahu came and said, their job is just to stamp the passport. They have no authority. But the fact that he accepted them to be was a big humiliation for him, because he kept saying the Palestinian Authority will have absolutely no role in Gaza in this regard. Now with the Trump announcement, At one point, I want to buy Gaza. At another point, I want to develop Gaza. And the third point, I want to own Gaza, and so on and so forth. The Zionists are silent. They do not have an idea to present, at least in public. All what they are saying now is President Trump has put a plan, and this is the only plan on the table. This is said by Al-Utayba, the ambassador of the UAE in Washington, and was said today by who? By Netanyahu. Because he will not have the guts to challenge Trump and says, I have another plan for us to take over Gaza in this regard. May Allah bring the khair and the good for the people of Gaza, people of Palestine, and the Muslims around the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect them and from all the harm that's there, and bring for them the khair and the izzah and the dignity and the victory. Allahumma ameen. Inshallah, we have a question and a comment. Time for a question and comment. Do we have question and comment before we end, inshallah? Barakallah feek. Allah yajzik al-khair. Any question, any comment? Khair, tfaddal. They're what? شو هما؟ Oh no, that's too far. You know, look, we cannot exaggerate. From what Trump and Elon Musk are doing, they are disintegrating the government. And they are weakening the government, no doubt about this. And Russia and China will try to take advantage, no doubt. But at one point, the establishment in this country will wake up. It may be too late in this, no, just for the sake of time, it may be too late, because the Democrats at this point, they cannot take a stand, because the Congress and the Senate is in the hands of the Republican. They are waiting for those mistakes, they call, those mistakes to pile up and blow in the face of the government. I mean, imagine, they send a letter to 2 million government employees asking them to quit, and said, you have up to September, we'll pay you. You do not need to come to your jobs. We'll pay you. If you do not quit, we may fire you. And then there are about 75,000 so far took it. And then they froze money that to go to international aid organization, and froze money to go to other countries, foreign aid, except for Egypt and Israel. Worse than this, they sent a letter to the CIA asking the CIA members to quit. I mean, who's benefiting from this? I mean, Russia, no doubt. And this thing really very serious. I mean, for somebody who really cares of the security and safety of this country, to come and say, I'm going to dismantle, if all of them leaves, I don't care. I'm going to rebuild it. Furthermore, what's scary, now this is scary for everyone in the world, not just in the US. Yesterday, was it yesterday or Friday? Musk and his people fired 12,000 employees of the Department of Energy. Then they discovered those employees, some of them are the ones who control the safety and security of the nuclear weapons in the US. I mean, come on. I mean, this does not happen in a country like the United States. So, I mean, yeah, there are some signs that point to not encouraging future, but we should not exaggerate in that regard. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. جزاكم الله خير وبارك الله فيكم.